Hey guys, welcome back to Reading with Mo, and today is my very belated March and April wrap up for everything that I read in the past 2 months. I definitely didn't want to leave these books out and not talk about them, even though this is a bit later than I had originally planned and intended to talk about these books, but I didn't read a ton of books in either month compared to like what I normally read, so it's best, I probably feel like anyway, that I combined the 2 months together. So in March I read 7 books and in April I read 4. And mainly the reason for me reading less, besides just like being busy with a lot of other things in life, was I wasn't in the mood for audiobooks, and usually every month I can do at least 1 or 2 audiobooks per week. So taking that out of the equation definitely caused my reading numbers to drop, but that was okay because I mean, I tried probably like 4 or 5 different audiobooks. They just weren't clicking for me. It was definitely a me thing, I feel like, not the audiobooks themselves. So maybe I'll revisit those again in the future, but we'll see. So let's get into the books. I have them all stacked here. I do think that all the books that I read were books that I have physical copies of, so I'll be able to show you guys them. So let's get into it in no particular order, just in this random stack that I have them stacked up here by, I think on the top here I have Crooked Kingdom. I'm going to wait to talk about this book until I'll think a little bit further into the video because it's part of a whole series. Also, spoiler alert, if you guys are, I don't even know, like a warning, if you guys are not into the Shadow and Bone or Leigh Bardugo books, there's going to be a lot of those in this wrap up because I decided to read the Shadow and Bone trilogy and I reread the Six of Crows duology. So why don't we start with this one. This is Dear Justice by Nick Stone. This is the follow-up book to Dear Martin that came out a few years ago. I reread the first one with the intentions of going right into Dear Justice. I finished Dear Martin back in like February, and I started Dear Justice after, but for some reason or other I just kept pushing it back, and I ended up not actually fully completing this book until April. So I gave Dear Martin 5 stars. I gave this one 4 stars, but I feel like if I were to reread it and not have so many breaks in between me setting the book down and picking it up, because it's not really that long of a book. I probably got almost halfway through, and I don't even remember now why I didn't read it all the way through right away. I think I just had a lot of stuff going on and I enjoyed it for sure. I think in part because this book deals with kind of a heavier subject matter, even though it is a young adult book, is one of the reasons why it kind of took me longer to get through. Even though this book is the second or like follow-up to Dear Martin, we do see a lot of the same characters, but we're following a different perspective than the first book. In this book, we're following Quan, who is currently in jail, and he's saying that he's not guilty in the killing of a police officer. So we're getting flashbacks to his childhood and also seeing at the same time what's going on with his court case and everything. I think this was a really well written book. I do enjoy Nick Stone's writing, and so far I have not read a Nick Stone book that I have not enjoyed. Next we have a short story collection, and the cover on this one is definitely very gorgeous, and that is Love and Color: Mythical Tales from Around the World Retold by Bolu Babalola. This to me was a very well done short story collection. Like, it wasn't 5 stars, maybe like 4.5 for me, but it was very close. I really enjoyed these stories, and as someone who doesn't really read or is into a lot of like romance heavy literature, I really enjoyed this book, and I didn't mind that all these, obviously from the title Love and Color, all of these are romance stories. The author has reimagined 13 different like mythological tales, like the title says, from around the world into her own retellings, and I just found them very interesting. I enjoyed it as someone who wasn't really familiar with any of these myths that are being retold. So maybe if you have a little bit more of background with some of the stories, it could affect whether you enjoyed them or not. But for me, I really did enjoy most of them. I think there was only a few that I wasn't like the craziest about. So if you are into short story collections, this is definitely something that I would recommend. So I think I'm actually going to save all of the Leigh Bardugo books that I read over the past 2 months for the end of this video, because there's probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different books from her that I completed. So we're gonna do all the other books first. I have a couple other ones I want to talk about. So next we'll get into The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. I think I actually ended up listening to some of this on audiobook. I think I read this one back in March. My thoughts and opinions on some of these books are, I'm sure, gonna be a little bit fuzzy because it has been so long since I've read these books, but I'm gonna do my best to try to remember exactly what they were about and my feelings, even though they're not super fresh now that I've waited so long to talk about them. So this is one of the books that some of the plot details are a little bit lost to me, but I do remember that I really enjoyed reading this book. It takes place, well, kind of in dual timelines, but mainly in 1950s in Tehran. We're following Roya, who is a teenager, and she is living through all of this like political upheaval that is going on at the time. She goes to this stationery shop and she ends up meeting this boy there. His name is Bahman, and they both just have this really cute romance together. But okay, so then I don't want to say too much because I can't remember now how much, now that it's coming back to me, how much is going to be spoilers or not. I really enjoyed this book. I would recommend the audiobook from what I can remember. I think it's so long I can't even remember how well I enjoyed the audiobook, but yeah, I think now that I'm thinking about it, I did listen to this one, I think, entirely on audiobook. I can't remember if I let you guys know my star rating, but I gave this one 4 stars. I would definitely recommend, and it's something I could see myself wanting to reread again in the future. Okay, so the last book we have before we get into all of the Six of Crows Lee Bardugo goodness is Half of a Yellow Sun by Shimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I probably said that wrong, but we're gonna keep going. So this book was me giving this author a second chance. I read Americana a few years ago, and I remember it being like super hyped up, so I was really excited going into it. And while I don't think it was a bad book, it just didn't really fully live up to my expectations for going into it. Like, I thought it was okay, I just think I had too high of expectations. So I ordered this book from Waterstones, I believe, a few months ago, and instead of just letting it sit on my shelf for forever before I finally got around to reading it, I decided to pick it up. I was in the mood for it, and I really enjoyed this book. There's also a movie adaptation as a side note, and I liked watching the movie too. Right after I finished the book, I watched the movie. I ended up giving my rating for this book 4 stars. I don't believe that there was any books in the past 2 months that I gave 5 stars to, unfortunately. I don't know if it's the books or me, or I'm just being super picky, but I'm very selective, I guess, with which books that I'm deciding to give 5 stars to. In this book, we do follow, I believe it was like 3 perspectives that we were rotating through, and I really did enjoy reading all of them. I will say that there was one of the perspectives that I enjoyed the least, but I mean, usually when we are following multiple perspectives, there's 1 or 2 that we end up enjoying more or kind of leaning towards wanting to hear more of their perspective from. This book takes place in Nigeria in the 1960s, and we're following this group of characters that are all like in each other's orbit and worlds. So we're following Ugwu, who he is this poor boy from a poor village, and he comes to work as a houseboy for a university professor. And then we're following Olana, and she has left her life of privilege in Lagos to go live with this professor. And then we have Richard, who is a shy Englishman who is in thrall to Olana's twin sister. And this is all centered around the Nigerian Civil War, which is something I don't really have a lot of familiarity with myself personally. But after reading this book, it definitely made me interested in reading some nonfiction books about the Nigerian Civil War, because I have read another book, I believe it was called War Girls, which is like a science fiction novel that was kind of had to do with the Nigerian Civil War, but it's something I would definitely be interested in learning more from. So if you guys have any Nigerian history books, nonfiction books that you would recommend to me, definitely let me know, because I was looking through Goodreads to try to find some. I think I added a few on here, but I'm not exactly sure where to start with that. But anyways, back to the book itself. I really am glad that I gave this author a second chance, because I really did enjoy reading this book. I feel like the author found a good way to kind of give us some of the history and backstory of the Civil War, but still putting it through the perspectives of different types of people that would be experiencing this, while at the same time like living their own lives and going through their own different trials and tribulations of their own lives, you know, as this war is happening just in their personal lives. I think now that I'm thinking back on it, because I believe this is like one of the first books that I finished back in March. I actually listened to this one on audiobook. I think I mostly listened to this one on audiobook, or I might have gone back and forth a little bit, but most of it was on audio. This is a very long story though, because this book is about just over 400 pages, and it's a very character heavy plot focused, or I should say very character focused story as opposed to plot. So if that's something that you are not okay with, then maybe this isn't something you would want to pick up. But yeah, if you read Americana and like me were not like super like blown away by it, maybe this is something that you would still want to try. So the rest of the books that I'm going to be talking about are all books that are part of the Grisha Verse series by Leigh Bardugo. I watched the Netflix adaptation that came out, and that's what obviously kind of with a lot of people right now in the booktube world have been prompted to read and pick up her books again. So prior to all of that, I had already read the Six of Crows duology, I think like a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of my first times really reading a young adult fantasy type of book. So I wanted to read them all in the like chronological order. And so I had purchased the Shadow and Bone series. I don't specifically remember which editions these are. This is the Squarefish is the publisher, and they have these really nice covers here. They're all paperback. I think I bought this at like half price books last year, and I finally got around to reading them. So it starts off with the Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin Rising. I don't know how much I should or shouldn't say about the books, because I feel like at this point, if you're into reading and stuff, a lot of people are very familiar with this, but the bare bones of it is a young adult fantasy series. And we're following the story of Alina, who she's an orphan, and she lives in this place where they have to make this trip back and forth across the fold, which is like this shadow fold thing where there's these creatures in it that it's very dangerous, people die. When she goes through it, she discovers that she has this power that she didn't even know that she had before. So in this world, there's people called Grisha, and each of them have different like elements that they can control. So some of them are more like healing, and some of them are like the wind and nature and fire and stuff like that. And I'm probably butchering this explanation, but you get the idea. I was a little bit worried going into the series, not knowing if I was kind of past the age audience that this is target audience, that I wouldn't enjoy it that much, because it is a young adults targeted fantasy series, and this is something that was written, I forget what year this was published now. This was published back in 2013, so I didn't know if it would still be relevant and interesting to a more adult reader in 2021, but I am glad to say that I really did enjoy the series. I believe I gave all of the books 4 stars in the series, and I was able to complete them all. I think I finished all of these in 1 month, so they definitely were interesting enough to keep me going through them. I don't believe I listened to any of these on audiobook. All in all, the Grishaverse world is a world that I am very glad to have found, and I feel like it's very interesting to read about. So then on to, after that book, then the Six of Crows duology takes place, which I have these really beautiful collector's editions. I can't remember where I got these from. I think from Book Depository. So we have Six of Crows, which they did in the red and black with the red sprayed edges, and then we have Crooked Kingdom, which is the black and gold with black sprayed edges, and I think these are really beautiful together. I remember when I first read them, I first read them when Crooked Kingdom came out, I believe. So I binge read these back to back, and it was so long ago, and I read them so fast because I remember I really enjoyed them and I wanted to know like what was next, what was happening in the story and everything. And I remember really loving Six of Crows the first time I read it, and I liked Crooked Kingdom, but I remember I didn't like it as much as Six of Crows. And from what I can remember, I think I felt like kind of the same way still this time. Like I really did like both of the books though still. I was worried about rereading them, whether I would like them or not. I was curious to know if I would enjoy them more on a reread, or if I would kind of not like them as much. And I feel like I liked them about the same. Maybe just, I feel like when I reread it, I liked them, but not quite as much as the first time as I can remember. But I really did enjoy reading the books, but I think that I just enjoyed them most the first time when I was discovering everything fresh and new, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I had more of that sense of anxiety and anticipation to see what's going to go on, what's going to happen to each of the different characters, like who's safe, what's going to happen to people. And now, since I already knew everything going in, it was a bit of a different experience. So I ended up giving both these 4 stars, and in this series, to sum it up basically, it takes place in the same Grishaverse world, but in a different part of the world, and we're following 6 different characters who are all kind of these like misfits, found family trope things, and they end up having to work together to try to do this job where it will make them set. If they complete this job, they'll have enough money to be set for pretty much the rest of their lives. All of them have their personal reasons for needing this money, and we learn the backstories on the different characters and the different situations and heist things that go on. It's a very action-y, plot-driven book, but I feel like there is a lot of character exploration and depth in these books as well. And I really enjoyed these characters that make up all 6 of them, and I really enjoyed these books. And the ending was really good. I can't tell obviously any spoilers or anything. There'll be no spoilers for any of this stuff, but I really did enjoy it. So now I am working on reading the 2 books in the King of Scars duology, which take place, I believe, a year after Crooked Kingdom happens. So I finished King of Scars. I still have to read Rule of Wolves, so I'll be talking about that. Look for that in my next month's wrap up for the month of May. Hopefully I'll have completed both of those books by then. And then last but not least, we have The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo, obviously, and this is Midnight Tales and Dangerous Magic. So this is kind of like a folk tale stories. They are also set within the Grisha worlds, but they don't really have anything to do with the other main books. They're kind of just different like tales that are part of the Grishaverse. You don't have to have read any of the other books to be able to read this, and I really enjoyed it. So first off, it's a very beautiful book. Let me just show you guys this up close. So this is the cover here, and when you take off the dust jacket, which I didn't oh wait, no, those ones already had off. Underneath the dust jacket is the black and gold embossing, which is very beautiful. And when you're reading each of the tales that are in here, which altogether there was 6 tales that are told through here. There's like different illustrations and things on each page, and I think that was a really nice little thing that they included in there. This is definitely obviously going to be most enjoyed by people who are familiar with the Grishaverse and with people who have read the other books. But like I said before, you don't have to have read any other books in the series to have read this. I believe I gave this one 4 stars as well. Yes, I did. So all of these stories that are in here are kind of inspired by myths, folklores, and fairy tales, but also set in with some of the similar things that you'll be familiar with if you have read the other books in the Grishaverse. I enjoyed them. They were very fairy tale-like, and I definitely enjoyed my time reading this book. It's very short, so it didn't take long to get through, and I think it's just like a nice fun little add-in to go on with the rest of the books. So that's everything that I got to for the last 2 months. Better late than never, I guess. I definitely didn't want to skip by these months and not tell you guys about the books that I had read, because there were actually quite a few that were really good that I wanted to talk to you guys about. So that's it for this video. Hopefully my next month's one will be a little bit more timely and I don't have to combine it again, but you never know. I can make no promises, so we'll just have to see. And that's it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!